In a quiet corner of the vast galaxy, far beyond the familiar stars of Earth, there lay a forgotten system where ancient secrets slept. For many generations, the sacred sword of the alien queen had been lost. This sword was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of honor, unity, and the deep traditions of an alien race known for their wisdom and strength. The sword had been passed down through the ages, a treasured relic that held the power to guide a people and inspire loyalty. But one day, it vanished without a trace, and its loss left a void in the heart of the alien empire. Back on Earth, in a small town nestled between gentle hills and a calm sea, lived a human explorer named Ethan. Ethan was curious by nature and brave at heart. Since he was a child, he had been fascinated by stories of ancient relics and lost treasures. He grew up reading old books, listening to the legends told by his grandfather, and dreaming of adventures in distant lands and even beyond the stars. When Ethan heard whispers of a mysterious artifact that could change the balance of power in far-off galaxies, he felt an irresistible call to uncover the truth. Ethan's journey began in the dusty archives of a local museum, where he spent long hours studying faded maps and brittle scrolls. The clues he found were subtle yet clear, a series of symbols that hinted at the existence of an object far older than any human artifact. These symbols were similar to the designs he had seen in an old book about interstellar civilizations. Though many doubted the legends, Ethan believed that there was a hidden story waiting to be told. The idea that a relic from another world might be on Earth filled him with both wonder and determination. As Ethan pieced together the clues, he learned that the relic was not lost by chance. Long ago, a traveler from a distant star system had come to Earth. This traveler carried the sacred sword of the alien queen. For reasons that were not clear, the traveler chose to leave the sword behind, hidden away in a place known only to a few. The traveler's act was both mysterious and bold, leaving behind a trail of questions that only a daring soul like Ethan could hope to answer. One crisp morning, as the sun rose over the quiet town, Ethan set out on his quest. With a small backpack, a notebook full of sketches and notes, and a heart full of hope, he began to follow the trail that had been laid out by ancient signs and forgotten lore. His path led him through thick forests and across rocky hills. Every step was filled with anticipation and the thrill of the unknown. Along the way, he encountered local people who shared old tales of strange visitors and odd relics. Their words, simple and heartfelt, added to the mystery and made his resolve stronger. Ethan's journey was not easy. There were moments when the path became unclear and the clues seemed to fade into the whisper of the wind. Yet with each obstacle, he remembered the legends of honor and the great responsibility that came with the relic. The human spirit that he carried within himself was like a beacon in the dark, guiding him forward even when the road was rough. He learned to trust his instincts and to look for signs in nature, a unique rock formation, a pattern in the trees, even the way the light fell on the ground at a certain time of day. In the midst of his travels, Ethan found a small hidden valley that seemed untouched by time. There, in the soft light of early evening, he discovered an ancient stone pedestal covered in moss and lichen. The symbols on the pedestal matched those in his notebook. This discovery filled him with both awe and a sense of destiny. He knew in his heart that he was close to finding the sacred sword that once belonged to an alien queen. The relic, lost for so many years, now beckoned to him with silent promise and hope. At that moment, the valley seemed to hold its breath. The air was calm, and the only sound was the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. Ethan approached the pedestal with care. His hands trembled slightly as he brushed away the moss, revealing more of the ancient carvings. He studied each mark, feeling a deep connection to the past. It was as if the very stone spoke to him, sharing stories of honor, bravery, and the enduring power of legacy. Though Ethan did not yet understand all the secrets of the relic, he felt that his journey had only just begun. Every step, every new discovery, was a part of a larger tapestry that linked the fate of Earth with the distant stars. With the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, he made a quiet promise to himself. He vowed to continue his quest, to search for more clues, and to one day return the sacred sword to its true place. Ithan woke early in the morning, his heart still full of wonder from the discoveries of the previous night. The ancient symbols he had seen in the hidden valley spoke clearly to him. The sacred sword was not far away. With the soft light of dawn warming the sky, he packed his small bag and set out to follow the fresh clues that had emerged. His journey led him away from the quiet valley and into a deep, dense forest, where the ground was soft with fallen leaves and moss. Each step he took was filled with both excitement and determination. Ithan followed a narrow, winding trail marked by old carvings that he had carefully copied in his notebook. The path was not easy to follow, for nature had reshaped the land over the years. Many familiar landmarks had vanished beneath thick growth and time. Yet the human explorer pressed on, remembering his grandfather's words that the greatest treasures were hidden behind the hardest journeys. With that thought warming his spirit, Ithan moved forward slowly, his eyes always scanning the ground for any sign that might point him toward his goal. After many hours of walking through the forest, the trees began to thin out, and the landscape opened up to reveal a rocky outcrop rising sharply from the land. The stones were old and worn, their surfaces etched with mysterious patterns. As Ithan studied the markings on the rocks, he recognized symbols that matched those in his notebook. It became clear that the outcrop was not merely a natural formation, but a part of a grander structure built long ago by an ancient people. With a mix of caution and excitement, he approached the rocky formation and discovered a narrow passage leading into a dark cave hidden behind a veil of climbing vines. The cave's entrance was almost secret, as if nature itself had guarded its door for centuries. Ithan took a deep breath and stepped into the cool, shadowy passage. Inside, the air was still and carried the faint scent of earth and old stone. He lit a small lamp that cast a weak, flickering light on the walls. The cave was lined with carvings and faded murals that told the story of a people who had once guarded a mighty relic. The images on the walls showed figures holding a gleaming sword, and the artistry was both gentle and strong. Each carving seemed to whisper a piece of a long-forgotten story, and Ithan felt honored to witness these relics of an ancient past. As he ventured deeper into the cave, the narrow path began to twist and turn, finally opening into a large, echoing chamber. The ceiling soared high above him, and in the center of the chamber stood an ancient pedestal carved from stone. This pedestal was covered in intricate symbols that echoed those he had seen outside. The room was silent, with only the sound of his own footsteps echoing across the cold stone floor. In that quiet space, it was clear that this was the very place where the sacred sword had been kept for generations. Ithan stepped forward slowly, his heart beating fast with both fear and hope. He studied the carvings on the pedestal carefully and saw that they told the tale of a traveler from a far-off star who had come to Earth long ago. This traveler had left the sword behind, either as a gift or as a test, to be found by someone brave enough to claim it. The thought filled Ithan with a deep sense of purpose. Here, in this silent chamber, the relic awaited its rightful retriever. In the center of the pedestal lay a simple cloth, gently covering what appeared to be the hilt of a sword. With careful hands, Ithan lifted the cloth away and revealed the sacred sword. Even though the blade was covered in dust and bore the marks of age, it still shone with an inner light, a soft, steady glow that seemed to pulse with life. The sword was not merely a weapon, but a symbol of honor and ancient wisdom. It was a key that linked the past to the present, bridging the gap between different worlds. Ithan reached out and touched the hilt. In that moment, he felt a surge of warmth, and a deep, comforting energy spread through his hand. The simple act of touching the relic filled him with a feeling of connection to all those who had come before him. It was as if the sword recognized his courage and trusted him with its secret legacy. With great care, Ithan lifted the sacred sword from its resting place. He wrapped it in a clean cloth to protect it from the dust and prepared to leave the cave. Exiting the dark passage, Ethan found himself bathed in the light of the late morning sun. He paused at the edge of the forest, holding the sacred sword close to his heart. The cool metal and the steady light of the blade gave him strength. He recalled the ancient words he had read about the relic, that it was meant to unite and guide, not to divide. With a deep breath, he stepped onto a narrow path that led him away from the cave and toward the open land. The journey back was not without its challenges. The path took him over uneven ground and across small streams, and sometimes he had to climb steep slopes that tested his endurance. But with each obstacle, Ethan's resolve grew stronger. He helped a small creature trapped under a fallen branch and paused to admire the beauty of wildflowers that bloomed by the side of the trail. Every moment of the journey reminded him that retrieving the sacred sword was more than an act of bravery. It was a step toward understanding the deep ties that bound his world to those of the ancient visitors. As the day wore on, Ethan climbed a gentle hill to survey the land. From this higher ground, he could see remnants of old structures and ruins that hinted at a once flourishing civilization. These ancient markers filled him with wonder and curiosity, and he made a mental note to study them later, for they might hold more secrets about the sacred sword's past. When the sun began to set, Ethan reached a quiet clearing and decided to make camp. He built a small fire and sat by it, the warm light dancing on the surface of the sacred sword that rested beside him. In the glow of the fire, he took out his notebook and carefully recorded every detail of his journey: the shape of the cave, the carvings on the pedestal, and the strong feelings that had welled up inside him upon touching the relic. Writing helped him hold on to the memories of the day, serving as a bridge between his past and the future challenges that lay ahead. Under a vast, starlit sky, Ethan lay on his simple mat, listening to the soft sounds of the night. In that peaceful moment, he understood that retrieving the sacred sword was not the end of his quest, but merely a step toward a greater destiny. The relic, now safely in his care, held the promise of unity and hope, a symbol that even the oldest secrets could bring new beginnings. As the night deepened, Ethan drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with visions of ancient stars and the whisper of distant voices guiding him on his journey forward galaxy, reaching the ears of the alien queen. For centuries, the sacred sword had been a symbol of her power, a symbol of her untouchable reign and the deep traditions of her people. To hear that a mere human had found it, and worse, was planning to return it to her. This news filled her with a fury she had not felt for ages. Hearing the news echoed across her grand palace, a place that seemed to float within the heart of a strange, gas-giant world. Several of her closest advisors and trusted warriors gathered in her chambers, ready to speak of what needed to be done. But the queen was already thinking ahead, her mind sharp and filled with questions. She considered the human. What kind of being dared to retrieve her sacred sword and return it to her, as though it were his to deliver? It was not long before the queen summoned her most powerful general, a towering alien named Oran. His warriors were known throughout the galaxy as elite fighters. Their relentless training made them feared, respected, and nearly invincible. If anyone could confront the human or force him to relinquish the sword, it was Oran. "Prepare the fleet," the queen commanded. "We are making haste. No one walks into my sacred lands and takes what belongs to me. Not even a human." The general nodded, understanding the weight of her words. As he left to rally the forces, the queen sat by the grand window of her chamber, gazing out at the chaos of galactic dust globes sprawled across the vastness of space. In her heart, deep inside, she felt uncertain. Powerful, alone, sacred. These were the words that filled her world. For as long as she could remember, it had been her tradition, her leadership, her throne that was never questioned. With a single motion, a single word, she could end any threat in an instant. But now, there was doubt. Ethan, this human, might have disrupted something vital, something she wasn't prepared to face, at least not yet. She flicked her wrist, and in an instant, a hologram emerged before her. The sacred sword flashed into view. What does he want with it? She whispered bitterly. What other plans does he have to disrupt my fate? Still caught in the tension of her thoughts, the queen began the journey into war. The path ahead was clear, the road paved with the cold resources of her people, and yet something held her back. She felt conflicted. Ethan's actions were not those of an ordinary treasure hunter. Something more than greed was at play. Meanwhile, Ethan was emboldened. He had now stood at the threshold of returning the sacred sword to its rightful owner. The journey had been long, years of chasing cryptic clues, studying ancient texts, and now it was almost complete. Yet, when he learned of the news, when he heard the anger that burned in the voice of the alien queen, that same fire and fury filtered through all messages sent across the stars, he realized the task before him wasn't just that of bringing a relic home. No, there were greater stakes, deeper layers, and cosmic forces at play. If he was to carry out his mission, he would have to face these head-on. Earth would not prepare him for what was to come. This was something only a human mind could approach with skill, an enigmatic, ancient alien queen, embroiled in secrets and legacies of her own. No simple task would ever be enough for what lay at the center of this conflict. A higher understanding of who they were, to both the alien queen and humankind, was waiting to be revealed. But Ethan, ever determined, didn't retreat. He did not backtrack into the shadows. He was a man on mission. The sacred sword gave him strength, power, understanding. But as a human, he needed something more. He would need compassion, intelligence, and experience to navigate this otherworldly war that he was walking into. The Queen's fleet was now ready, blazing across the stars, making their way toward Ethan's location. The coming confrontation would bring a reckoning. It was no longer about the sword, but about belief, about truth, about destiny itself. The fleet's ships glistened like starbeams in the vast emptiness of space. Soon, both the strength of the Queen's armies and the will of one human explorer would finally clash. A storm of emotions boiled within Ethan: excitement, fear, uncertainty. The human knew the odds against him. No one slept soundly in the face of such overwhelming power. Yet there was another force pulling him forward. The knowledge that by returning the sword, by fulfilling this mission, he would be part of a story bigger than anyone could ever imagine. And that thought, the vision of what was about to unfold, offered him more courage than any weapon ever could. As the alien queen moved closer, a wave of pain swept over her. The deeper she thought about this human meddler crossing her path, the more the anger bubbled beneath the surface. Her pride as queen of her mighty people clashed with the challenge her mind couldn't escape. Never had she felt so cornered, for although she carried the might of the stars at her fingertips, there was a greater force fast approaching, the pull of destiny itself. The queen couldn't yet fathom what this young human man might symbolize, how his actions would ultimately challenge everything she had believed to be true about her own people, her own traditions, and perhaps even herself. And so, in the heart of the galaxy, a clash of legacies began. Some pieces of the puzzle would fall into place, and many depths of unknown might still reveal their mysteries. The coming battle was inevitable, but its outcome was far from guaranteed. The stage was set for a shifting power, the pull of old beliefs, new paths, and those individuals shaping their own futures beyond the reach of time. And with that, the fate of the sacred sword, of the Queen, and of Earth would soon be decided under forces they couldn't yet understand. For 28 seconds. Part 3. The Queen's Wrath Unleashed. In the far reaches of space, news of the sacred sword's return spread like wildfire among the ancient stars. The alien queen, ruler of a vast and proud empire, sat on her throne inside a grand command chamber aboard her flagship. The room was dimly lit by soft blue lights and holographic displays, all showing images of the lost relic that had recently been found. Her long, dark eyes fixed on the glowing screen that revealed a human figure holding the sacred sword. A deep anger stirred within her, for she believed that the return of the sword was not a gift, but a challenge to her authority. Over it, like silent guardians, when Ethan and Raylan exited the ship and set foot onto the structure, they were greeted by representatives of the Queen's people. They stood in silence, watching the human closely. The air was thick with tension, the fear that Ethan's return of the sword had, instead of inspiring harmony, disrupted the old order. The alien Queen's representatives were solid and imposing figures, their presence alone commanding respect. In their eyes, Ethan could see an implacable belief in the stability of their customs and traditions. Yet their gazes alone held no hate, only a burning desire to preserve what had been passed down for millennia. They viewed the changes that Ethan brought with him as challenges, not opportunities. "You've come to a place of great power, human," one of the representatives, Commander Arvik, uttered plainly as he stepped forward. "No one has stepped onto these grounds since the last of our ancestors returned. Your mere arrival disrespects the cycles." Ethan felt the weight of Arvik's words, but his voice was steady as he lifted the sacred sword. The glowing patterns on the blade were now a soft pulse, as if seeking understanding through the ages. "I didn't come to disrespect," Ethan answered firmly, looking around just as the glow from the sword echoed on the walls. "I've followed its path throughout this universe to reunite these symbols. I came to fulfill something larger than myself, to bring two peoples together. Not as conqueror, but as a messenger of peace. A change in ideals is not harmful if it leads to understanding." At that moment, the assemblage gathered before them, the energy of the sacred sword seemingly connecting them all, human and aliens alike, as an ancient door opened slowly before them, revealing the deepest parts of the ruins. The inside of this great chamber was vast, with smooth walls engraved with predictions and prophecies. The air was dense with the wisdom of ages. As benches formed around a great central artifact, there was a quiet, almost reverent hush that came over the group. The sound was softer, more respectful now, each of their thoughts settling into the shared understanding. A figure emerged from a shadowed archway. It was an elder from the alien Queen's people, an ancient being, calm and weathered, yet radiating wisdom of the highest order, with an aura of thoughtfulness. "You hold in your hand," the elder said with a gesture of one hand toward Ethan, "a tool that was forged not just from metal, but from the ideals of our past. It has linked destinies of civilizations together before. The question now is, will it do so again?" Ethan stepped forward, feeling his heart beating deeply in his chest. "I've always believed in the power of understanding, the power to unite." The elder nodded, recognizing something honest in the human. A glow began to surface from the portion of the relic held by Ethan in its hand. The symbols and hidden texts began to shift once again, lighting up an intricate map that showed more than just stars. It revealed paths through fractured realities and dimensions. "You are about to make a choice that goes beyond borders," the elder continued. "It is a decision that will affect each and every culture, one that ties ancient wisdom to modern ideas. We have lived with old beliefs, and you live with new ones. You must understand, the power of the sword lies not in ownership, but in its ability to ignite new perspectives." Arvik's voice broke the silence, his commands to defend their world strong but also misunderstood. "Do not think your new ideals make our old ones pointless. Beware of the cost of overstepping the wounds of time." Ethan's voice was clear and firm, as if the winds of generations had all led him to this moment. "I'm not here to upend your world. I'm here to bring new growth." The ancient elder spoke again, in a voice that seemed to portend 1,000 years of wisdom. "So let the sword guide you both, tradition and change." The tension between two worlds was palpable, but as Ethan stood there, the sword still glowing softly in his grasp, he finally felt with certainty that his ideals had merged with the will of the ancient wisdom in this room. The sword was not a weapon of war. It was a beacon that lit the way forward for both old and new generations to collaborate in peace. Just as moments of profound realization arrive unexpectedly, Ethan's words served the test of ages. There was no war fought upon the battleground of the mind. Instead, a silent promise, through true, shared understanding, had made room for both old and new ways to live together harmoniously. For 29 seconds, Part 6, The Battle of Ideals. In the vast chamber of an ancient star fortress, where light from distant galaxies filtered through stained glass-like windows, a moment of confrontation was about to unfold. Ethan, the brave human explorer, had come far with the sacred sword, guided by a promise of unity and hope. Now he faced a test of spirit, a challenge of skill and of ideals. Before him stood Kareth, a chosen warrior of the alien queen, whose duty was to protect the old ways and challenge any change that might come with the sword's return. Kareth was tall and strong. His armor, though light and elegant, was etched with symbols that spoke of generations of tradition and honor. In his hand he carried a slender energy blade that glowed softly, a symbol of his people's ancient customs. As Kareth bowed his head in a sign of respect, Ethan did the same, though he held his sacred sword close. Both understood that this duel was not meant to harm but to test the strength of their beliefs. The chamber filled with a quiet tension as the two warriors took their positions. The soft hum of distant stars and the gentle echoes of ancient music seemed to mark the start of something important. Kareth made the first move with graceful speed, his energy blade drawing bright lines in the dark air. Ethan responded calmly, his eyes fixed on his opponent. The two blades met with a soft hum, as if the very sound carried the weight of old legends and the promise of new beginnings. Every strike and every parry became a silent conversation. Kareth fought with the precision of one who had been taught from birth to honor tradition. His every move was a reminder of the duty to preserve the customs that had guided his people for centuries. In contrast, Ethan moved with the spirit of a seeker. Each action was filled with the hope that new ideas could add strength rather than tear apart what was old. Their swords danced together in a graceful ballet of light and motion, sending ripples of energy that sparkled against the fortress walls. Between their measured moves, Kareth spoke in a calm yet firm voice. "Our ways have kept our people strong for many generations." His words were simple but carried deep meaning, echoing with the wisdom of his ancestors. In response, Ethan blocked a gentle strike and said, "But new ideas can bring strength in times of change. I believe we can learn from each other." The simplicity of his words held a sincere hope that differences could be bridged by respect and understanding. Slowly, the duel transformed into a dialogue between two worlds. Kareth's movements were steeped in the customs of old, each step and turn a testament to his people's long history. Ethan's style, though different and unexpected, spoke of the courage to explore unknown paths and to embrace change when necessary. As the clash of their weapons echoed softly in the chamber, the sound itself seemed to weave a tapestry of hope and possibility. At one point, Kareth stepped back and lowered his blade, signaling a pause. In that still moment, he asked, "You, a human from a distant world, have come with a new way of thinking. How can you truly understand the duty that this sacred relic carries?" His eyes searched Ethan's face for a sign of honesty and depth. Holding his sword in a respectful stance, Ethan answered, "I do not claim to know all your customs, but I feel a deep connection with the spirit of this relic. It calls for unity and a bond between our worlds that goes beyond old barriers." The words struck a chord in Kareth's heart. For a brief moment, the warrior hesitated, his energy blade wavering as he considered the possibility that his cherished traditions might evolve. The silence that followed was filled with the quiet promise of a new dawn. The ancient fortress itself seemed to glow a little brighter, as if it recognized the hope in Ethan's simple, heartfelt reply. With renewed resolve, Kareth lifted his blade once more. But this time, his movements carried a gentler force, a blend of respect for his traditions and an openness to the ideas Ethan brought. The duel resumed, each strike and parry now infused with meaning beyond mere combat. Their weapons sang a duet of old honor and new vision, a conversation that reached beyond the physical to touch upon the deeper truths of their peoples. As the battle wore on, It became clear that neither warrior sought to overpower the other. Their contest was not about victory or defeat, but about finding balance between what had been and what could be. Each move they made was like a word in a dialogue, every block and riposte a line of poetry. In this dance of light and shadow, both came to see that strength could be found in both steadfast tradition and in the courage to welcome change. When the duel finally slowed, both Ethan and Kerith stood with their swords lowered, breathing heavily yet filled with respect for one another. They shared a look that spoke of understanding, a recognition that their meeting was not a clash of enemies, but a bridge between different ways of life. In that quiet moment, the chamber was filled not with tension, but with a gentle hope that the future could unite the wisdom of the past with the promise of progress. The battle of ideals had ended not with one winner, but with a shared promise. It was a contest where both combatants learned from each other, finding that the true strength of a people lay not in rejecting change, but in embracing it with honor. As the ancient fortress's light shone down on them, Ethan and Kerith knew that their encounter was only the beginning. Their meeting had opened the door to a future where the sacred relic, the wisdom of old, and the bright potential of new ideas could all find a place together. Thus, the duel ended with a mutual pledge, a vow that their peoples would seek to understand one another. In that chamber, the battle of ideals became a symbol of hope, a moment when pride and progress danced together to forge a new path for both worlds. The duel had ended, not in victory or defeat, but in understanding. Ethan and Kerith stood in the grand hall of the ancient fortress, their weapons lowered, their breath still heavy from the intense battle. The silence that followed was not filled with tension, but with something new, an unspoken respect between two warriors from different worlds. The sacred sword, now pulsing gently with a golden light, seemed to acknowledge the moment. It was no longer just an ancient relic, but a bridge between two civilizations. Kerith, still holding his energy blade, looked at Ethan with thoughtful eyes. "You fight not just with skill, but with purpose," he admitted, his voice carrying the weight of long-held traditions. "You do not seek to erase our ways, but to understand them." There was no more hostility in his tone, only curiosity and the beginnings of acceptance. Ethan nodded, gripping the hilt of the sacred sword firmly but gently. "I never wanted to take what belongs to your people," he said honestly. "I only wanted to return it, to honor its true meaning. But now I see that this sword is more than a relic. It carries a message, a lesson from the past that can guide us into the future." At that moment, a quiet hum echoed through the chamber. The sword's glow intensified, and for the first time, the ancient markings along its blade rearranged themselves into a language neither Ethan nor Kerith had ever seen before. A soft vibration pulsed through the air, as if the fortress itself was responding to their newfound understanding. The alien queen watched from her throne, her sharp gaze locked onto the glowing sword. The weight of history rested upon her shoulders, and she knew this was the moment that would define the path forward for her people. She rose from her seat, stepping forward with grace, her royal robes flowing behind her like liquid silver. Her expression was unreadable, but there was no mistaking the power she held in her stance. Kerith and Ethan both turned to her as she approached. She stopped before them, her eyes flickering between the sacred sword and the two warriors who had come to represent something greater than themselves. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a voice both strong and composed, she spoke. "For generations, we believed that the return of this sword would bring chaos. We thought it would mark the end of our traditions, the fading of our honor." She looked at Ethan, her gaze piercing, but no longer filled with anger. "But you have shown us something different. You have proven that respect does not mean surrender, and that new ideas do not erase old truths. They strengthen them." Ethan listened carefully, sensing the importance of her words. The queen continued, her voice softer now. "You have honored the past while showing us a path to the future. This duel was not a battle to claim the sword, but a test to see if we were ready for change." She turned to Kerith, her most trusted warrior. "And you have shown me that our people are ready. Kareth bowed his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her wisdom. The queen then extended her hand toward Ethan, gesturing toward the sword. "Keep it," she said. The room fell silent. Even the envoys who had been watching from the shadows gasped in surprise. The sacred sword had been a symbol of her people's legacy for centuries, and now she was offering it to a human. Ethan hesitated, his fingers tightening around the hilt. I can't take this," he said, shaking his head. "It belongs to your people." The queen's lips curved into the faintest smile. "And yet it has chosen you," she replied. "The sword revealed its hidden message to you, not to us. That means something." She glanced toward the glowing inscriptions. "Perhaps it is a sign that our destinies are meant to be intertwined." Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He understood now. This was not about ownership. It was about trust. The queen was not giving him the sword as a possession, but as a responsibility, a symbol of unity, of shared purpose. He slowly nodded and lifted the blade, feeling the energy flow through him once more. "Then I will carry it," he said, not as a human taking what is not his, but as a guardian of its legacy. The queen stepped back, her decision made. "From this day forward, we will not see humans as outsiders," she declared. "We will not fear the changes that time brings. Instead, we will walk forward together, as allies, as learners of each other's ways." The envoys bowed, and even Kareth, once Ethan's opponent, pressed a fist to his chest in a gesture of respect. Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This was not just the end of his journey, it was the beginning of something greater. Later, as he stood on the balcony of the fortress, overlooking the vast expanse of alien stars, Raylan joined him. "Do you realize what you've done?" the envoy asked. "You didn't just return a sword. You helped change the course of history." Ethan exhaled, the cool breeze brushing against his skin. "I didn't do it alone," he admitted. "It was never just about me. It was about all of us." He looked down at the sacred sword, its glow now steady and warm. It was not a weapon, not a prize. It was a bridge, a connection between two civilizations that had once been strangers. And now, they stood together at the edge of something new. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The sacred sword had returned home, not to one person or one world, but to a future where understanding, honor, and unity could shape the destiny of all who sought it.